So I asked ChatGPT, artificial intelligence, is Bhagavad-Gita about Sankhya or is Bhagavad-Gita about Vedanta? And I really, really like the question, the answer that ChatGPT gave me. And ChatGPT said very simply, Bhagavad-Gita is Sankhya in a Vedantic wrapper. I'm repeating it. Bhagavad-Gita is Sankhya in a Vedantic wrapper. I thought that was a very, very intelligent way of putting it. Because it's true. If you go to the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita and you go to 14.3 and 14.4, you will find the verses which say, Mama yonir mahad brahma tasmin garbham dadami aham sambhava sarva bhutanam tato bhavati bharata. So it says very clearly that this total material substance called mahat, this is very important that you don't confuse this mahat and confuse it with Brahman. Mahat is not Brahman. There are actually two aspects when you're talking about Sankhya. One aspect is called Purush and one aspect is called Prakriti. Purush is the Supreme Purush, the totality of Supreme Purush. And the Mahat consists of Prakriti. It is the totality of Prakriti. Krishna explains, Bhumi apo nalo vayur kham mano buddhirevacha ahankara itya me bhinna prakriti ashtada. So Krishna is explaining that you are formed out of my superior energy, which is Purush, and your inferior energy, which is earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego, they are formed out of my inferior energy, which is Prakriti. That's why he says, Aparayam itastu anyam prakritim vidhi me param jiva bhutam mahabhao yayedam dharyate jagat. And how does that occur? It occurs very simply because Krishna says the Mahat or the totality of Prakriti, what is referred to in Bhagavad-Gita as Mahat Brahma, which is the totality of Prakriti, is my womb. And that womb, Krishna says, I impregnate, making possible the birth of all living entities. So what Krishna says is that he impregnates as Krishna as the Supreme Purush, impregnates the totality of Prakriti. And by impregnating the totality of Prakriti, he creates all living entities. Sarva yoneshu kaunteya, this is 14.4. Sarva yoneshu kaunteya murtaya sambhavanti yaha tasham brahma mahadyonir aham bija pradapitah. So you understand that of all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by my impregnation of Purush within this Prakriti. And I am the seed-giving father. So very clearly you should understand that in this Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna is talking about Sankhya. Sankhya is dualistic. And Sankhya being dualistic means there is Purush and there is Prakriti. Both Purush and Prakriti are subsumed to Brahman. So Krishna elsewhere says that Purush and Prakriti, beyond Purush and Prakriti, there is Brahman. And then elsewhere Krishna says, Brahmano hi pratishtaham amritasya vyasya, that beyond Brahman is Krishna. I am the source, I am the rest, I am the support of Brahman. So Brahman emanates from Krishna And from Brahman, you get Purush and you get Prakriti, which is described for the first time here in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita, where Krishna explains that you are part Purush and part Prakriti. That part of you which is Prakriti is earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. So practically everything you know is made up of Prakriti. And you are the Purush, who is beyond and superior to all of these. So Krishna points out that indeed, etad yonini bhavutani sarvanitya upadaraya aham kritsnaya jagata prabhava pralayastata. And because he is the source of Brahman, and Brahman is the source of both Purusha and Prakriti, Krishna explains that he is the source of all that is material and all that is spiritual within this world. And then he points out, this is a very important verse in chapter 7, verse 7. Mata paratram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya mai sarvam idam proktam sutre manigana eva. O conqueror of wealth, O Arjuna, there is no truth that is superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung upon the thread. So Krishna is there in everything. So being the source of everything, being resting in everything, he is in fact the thread upon which everything in creation rests. Rasoham apsu kaunteya prabhasmi shashishuraya pranava sarva vedeshu shabdake paurusham nisu. So Krishna says, I am the taste of water. I am the light of the sun and the moon. I am the syllable Om in the Vedic mantras. I am the sound in ether and ability. So when you talk about earth, water, fire, air, and ether, all of them have different aspects. So he is explaining that he is the taste of water, he is the light of sun and moon, he is the syllable Om and the sound in ether. All of these is what is Krishna. And he goes on to say that he is the fragrance of the earth and he is the heat and fire. So that covers earth, water, fire, air, ether. And he says, I am the life of all that lives and I am the penance of ascetics. So he says, I am the source of all that is intelligent. I am the original seed of all existence. I am the strength of all powerful men. Krishna says, I am the source of the strength of the strong, but not strength that is used in passion and desire, but without passion and desire. Krishna is also dharma aviruddho vyuteshu kamosmi bharata sabha. He says, I am also that sex life, which is not contrary to religious principles. So all that sex life which is within the shelter of legitimate religious principles is considered to be Krishna. Ye chaiva sattvika bhava rajasas tamasas cha ye mata evaiti tan vidhi natva aham teshu te mai. So this has been explained also in the 14th chapter, that all the three gunas, goodness, passion, ignorance, sattva, rajas, tama, are all manifested through Krishna. But Krishna is completely independent and he is not influenced or under the modes of Prakriti. In fact, he says that because he is beyond Prakriti and all that we know is Prakriti, everything that we can see, smell, taste, hear, touch, all of it is Prakriti. And he is beyond all of that. Tribir Gunamair Bhaver Ebi Sarvam Idam Jagat Mohitam Nabhijanati Mam Ebhya Param Avyayam. Those who are deluded by Prakriti cannot know me because he says I am above all the modes of Prakriti and I'm inexhaustible. Now, this is very important because we are part Purush and we are part Prakriti. We are part infinitesimal Purush and we are part Prakriti, which is everything that we see, know, think. But what is important to understand is why we struggle in life. We struggle in life because we are struggling with our Prakriti. That's what is happening. Krishna explains, Mamai Vamso Jiva Loke Jiva Bhut Sanatana Mana Shastra Indriyani Prakriti Sthani Karshati. So Krishna is explaining that since we are not the supreme Purush, but we are fragments of that Purush which has impregnated the Mahat to create individual living entities. This Purush that we are is foolishly struggling with Prakriti. And as we struggle with Prakriti, which consists of our mind and the five senses, Mamai Vansho, because we are a fragment of an ounce of Krishna. We are an ounce of the Supreme Purush. And that is why we struggle. But Krishna says you should not struggle. And this is another very important verse. Devi esa gunamayi mama maya duratya mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. This Prakriti is my divine energy. It is his, Krishna's divine energy. Even if it is inferior, separated energy, it is his divine energy. And not only is it his divine energy, Prakriti is totally under the control of Krishna. Maya Dhyakshena Prakriti Sluyate Sa Characharam Etunanena Kaunteya Jagad Viparivartate. So Krishna says, Maya Dhyakshena Prakriti. I am the ruler, I am the controller of Prakriti. And Krishna says here in text 14, chapter 7, that this Prakriti is his divine energy, which is fully under his control. And as long as you struggle against your Prakriti, you are struggling against Krishna. You're struggling against God. But if you learn to surrender unto Krishna, Krishna says, Mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etam taranti. So there are two aspects of surrender. One aspect, I am repeating this, but I've told you this before, but there are two aspects of surrender. One is active surrender, which is to do or let Prakriti do what Krishna wants it to do. The other aspect of surrender is that Krishna is driving the engine of your Prakriti. So instead of trying or struggling with Prakriti, you let Krishna do what he wants to do with your Prakriti. So one is to let Prakriti do what it needs to do or wants to do. Second is you surrender and stop struggling with Prakriti. Krishna says elsewhere in the Bhagavad-Geeta, Ishvara sarva bhutanam hridaya desha arjuna tistati, brahmyan sarva bhutani yantrarudani maya. Krishna says, I am seated in your heart and I am driving you onward towards your destiny. You are merely seated in a machine made of material energy. So this Prakriti, which is part of you, is being driven towards its destiny by Krishna. And Krishna wants you to surrender to what this Prakriti and his voice as Supreme Purush within the individual Purush is trying to tell you. So Krishna says, Devyasa gunamai mama maya duratyaya mam eva ye prapadyante. When you learn to surrender unto me, then you will reach. You can cross over Prakriti and you can reach me. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hriday desha arjuna tistati. Brahmyan sarva bhutani yantrarudani maya. Tam eva sharanam gaccha sarva bhavena bharata tat prasadat param shantim sthanam prapshashi shashvatam. So Krishna says, if you simply surrender unto me, to this Lord who is in your heart, actively as well as passively when required, as appropriate, then he says, I can take you towards peace, perfection, and the supreme destination. But everyone cannot do that. Earlier, Krishna has said that there are many thousands of people, Manushyanam Sahasreshu, Kaschid Yatati Siddhaye, Yatatam api Siddhanam Kaschin Mam Veti Tatvatah. Out of many thousands of people, hardly one will seek perfection. And of those who seek perfection, hardly one will know me in truth. And what is that? Why is that? Because there are some people who are, until they change their attitude, until they change their nature, or until they change their way or perception of looking at things, they cannot come to Krishna. And that is described in chapter 7, text 15. See, earlier in 4th chapter, Krishna has declared that Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha, you see, Man Maya Upashrita, Bahavo Jnana Tapasa, Puta Madhava Magata. So Krishna, at that time when he declares that he is God in the 4th chapter, he says to Arjun that those who know me as God and they understand the divine nature of my appearance and activities don't have to return here into this world again. But he gives the characteristics or the qualities of those people who reach, who can accept Krishna as God. And he says very clearly that one who has been purified of attachment, fear, anger, such people over many lifetimes have become purified. Such are the people who can accept Krishna totally. And here Krishna explains that people who are of 4 types cannot come to Krishna unless they change their perception and their ways. And these are Namam Duskritino Mudha Prapadyante Naradamah Maya Partha Jnana Asuram Bhavam Ashritah. So Krishna explains very clearly that number 1, a person who is a Mudha cannot come to him. Who is a Mudha? Mudha is a fool. A fool does not see or accept God. In the Bhagavad-Geeta, in the Mudgara Stotra of Adi Shankaracharya, you have this Bhajagovindam verse. And there he declares that Bhajagovindam, Bhajagovindam, Govindam Bhajamudamate, Samprapte Sanihite Kale, Nahi Nahi Rakshati Dukaringa Karane. Bhajagovindam, Bhajagovindam, Govindam Bhajamudamate. Muda is a fool. The fool thinks that by learning Sanskrit and learning Sanskrit grammar, he will attain God. And Krishna and Shankaracharya is telling him that worship Krishna, you fool. God does not lie in Sanskrit. God does not lie in Dukringa, which is Sanskrit grammar. God lies in worshipping Krishna. So you have people who are fools. They are misled and they seek God in everything, but they cannot see God when he is placed before them. So Krishna first says that the mudha, the fool who is foolish, he cannot approach me. Similarly, he says nar adhamaha. What is a nar adhamaha? Nar adhamaha is a human being who is unfortunately so degraded, so unfortunately caught up by his lower elements that he is, shall I say, a degenerate. And being a degenerate, he is incapable of controlling his senses. He is incapable of following any disciplined form of life. He is a person who is completely caught up in all kinds of activities, from one addiction to another, from tobacco to alcohol to drugs to various other things. They are unable to control their senses. They engage in murder and rape and violence against their fellow human beings. Egregious violence, wanton violence. So these are naradamaha. Then Krishna says the third type of person who cannot come to him is the Maya Parthagnana. Very intelligent people. But intelligence is a quality that is entirely belonging to Prakriti. And to understand God, you need to cross beyond Prakriti. So if you use your Prakriti, which is your intelligence, to study Prakriti, there is no way you can cross beyond it. So they may be intelligent people, they may be Nobel Prize winners, they may be scientists, they may be engaged in all kinds of studies about Prakriti. They may be sociologists, they may be philosophers. But because their intelligence has been caught up in Prakriti and they are not able to transcend Prakriti, they continue studying Prakriti. Such people can never reach God. I remember speaking to a very intelligent person. He said, I'll do whatever you say, but it should not contradict my intelligence. My intelligence must tell me that whatever you're doing is the right thing. I said, no, you have to drop your intelligence. If you stick to holding on to your intelligence, you will never be able to understand what I'm trying to tell you. So he was shocked. He said, you want me to give up my intelligence? I said, yes. First, you use your intelligence to understand whether I am the right person or not. And once you understand that, you will have to drop your intelligence in order to proceed on the path. So I said, there are many examples in the Jataka tales and others where a person is invited for a lunch and coming for lunch, he comes with his knife and fork and spoon. And he leaves the spoon behind and uses the knife and fork as he enters the dining hall. And all he is served is soup. And to drink that soup, to eat that soup, he cannot use knife and fork. So he is told, please drop the knife and fork and lift that soup bowl to your lips and then drink of that soup bowl. He's saying, no, I can't drop my knife and fork. It's been useful to me all this time. So I must use the same knife and fork to eat the soup. Similarly, a Maya Parthagnana wants to use his intelligence to study God. When God lies beyond Prakriti, and therefore he lies beyond his intelligence. And therefore such people cannot approach Krishna. Asuram bhavam ashritah. Now it's important to understand that the Bhagavad-Gita is a theistical book. It is centered around the person, the divine person, Krishna. But prevalent at the time of the Bhagavad Gita and today, there are many atheistical philosophies. At the time that the Bhagavad Gita was spoken, those philosophies were, shall we say, known as Shramana philosophies. Today they are known as Buddhism and Jainism. The third variant, which is called Ajivikas, is now no longer, present. It is extinct. So when you take an atheistical philosophy and then try to understand God, it is not possible. Similarly, the Bhagavad Gita Sankhya is a different kind of Sankhya. It is a Sankhya that deals with God as the center. It is a theistic Sankhya. But the later forms of Sankhya that came about, which are attributed perhaps to Kapila, are atheistic forms of Sankhya. So when you follow an atheistical philosophy, then you cannot accept Krishna, or you cannot approach Krishna. So that's why Krishna says, Na mam duskritino mudha prapadyante naradama maya parta jnana asuram bhavam ashrita. But Krishna says there are 4 types of people who can approach him. And who are the 4 types of people who can approach him? In chapter 7, text 16, Krishna says, Chaturvidha bhajante mam janah sukritino arjuna arto jignasur artharti jnani cha bharata sabha. O Arjuna, O best among the Bharatas, 4 kinds of people can approach me and render devotional service unto me. Bhajante mam. First, he says, number 1 is the one who is in distress. One who is in distress. Arto. When you are in distress and there is nothing in the world that can help you, then you turn to God. Even the Buddha said that spiritual life cannot begin unless you have realized that the essence of life is suffering. Until you realize that the essence of life is suffering, no one can approach spiritual life. Forget about beginning it. So it's very important to understand and accept that when you're in distress, you must turn to God. We have the example of Draupadi. And Draupadi turned to so many people to save her. She turned to her husbands who were slaves and could not raise their voice or their hand. All the 5 Pandavas, wonderful people, powerful people, skilled in warfare. But when she looked to them, 5 husbands, not one of them could help her. No one should expect their spouse to help them, because that help lies beyond the spouse. And this example is given when you have Draupadi turning to the 5 Pandavas, the finest of spouses, 5 of them, and they could not help her. She turns to Bhishma Dev and she asks Bhishma Dev to help her. She turns to all the nobles in the court. Not one of them is willing to help her. And then finally, realizing the futility of approaching human elements when divine help is needed, she turns to Krishna and she says, Shankha Chakra Gada Pane Dwarkya Neela Chuta Govinda Pundarikaksham Rakshamami Sharanagata. And then Krishna helps her. Krishna saves her from being disrobed. No matter how much Dushasan pulls at a robe, more and more cloth comes in his hands until he collapses with exhaustion. It's not that God cannot help you through your spouse or God cannot help you through other people. But remember, it is God who is helping you, not that person who's helping you. And God can help you through anybody. But the point is, you have to turn to God like Draupadi did. And then Krishna says, the seeker of knowledge, the one who is inquisitive, Jignasu, he can attain or he can approach Krishna because he wants to know, what is this Bhagavad-Geeta? What does it contain? What is the philosophy? Who is Krishna? So thus the Jignasur comes and he approaches Krishna. Then the Artharthi, the one who desires wealth and power in the world, he comes to Krishna. He is also welcome. The example is given of Dhruv, who wants a kingdom greater than his grandfather. And he goes looking for how he can be a king greater than his grandfather, with a kingdom greater than his grandfather. And he comes across Narad Muni. Narad Muni tries to discourage him. He tells him, give up your desires. Become a renunciate like me. Wear orange robes and a shaven head. And follow me. So Dhruv said, nothing doing. Just tell me, I will worship the God that you tell me. But can he give me a kingdom greater than my grandfather? He is example of an Artharthi. And then Narad Muni teaches him how to worship Narayan. And thus Dhruv attains a kingdom greater than his grandfather by getting the vision of God. And when he gets the vision of God, he says, he's completely overwhelmed. He says, I don't want the kingdom now. And God tells him, sorry, you asked for the kingdom. So he said, yes, but having found you, I realized I was looking for a broken piece of glass and I found a wish-fulfilling jewel. Kacham vichinvan api divya ratnam. I was looking for a broken piece of glass and I found a wish, chintamani. Why should I accept this kingdom? He's saying, I'm sorry, you asked for it and you shall have it. And thus Dhruv is given that position. But there is a fourth type of person. And that fourth type of person is called the Jnani. Who is the Jnani? The Jnani is the one who has already realized that all things are but part of God. They are in him and there is. Earlier in the fourth chapter, Krishna has explained what is Jnana, and thus you understand who is Jnani. Yaj jnatva na punar moham evam yasyasi pandava sarva bhutani asheshani drakshasya atmano athomai. When you have learned the truth, you will know that all beings lie within me, they're in me and they're mine. So the Jnani has realized the all-pervading aspect of God. And having realized the all-pervading aspect of God, realizing that everything lies within God and is within him and is his, He now approaches Krishna because he realizes that Krishna is the source of this all-pervading divinity. When he realizes that Krishna is the source of this all-pervading divinity, this Jnani who has already realized the all-pervading nature of God and who turns to him, he is more than welcomed by Krishna. Krishna has said, Brahmano hi pratishtaham, I am the source, I am the rest, I am the support of Brahman. And when one who has realized Brahman turns to God and comes to Krishna, the source of the Brahman, Krishna is very pleased. And therefore he says in chapter 7, text 17, Tesham gnani nitya yukta eka bhaktir vishishyate priyo hi gnanino tyartham aham sa cha mama priya. The wise one, the knowledgeable one, who is in full knowledge of the all-pervading nature of God, who now approaches me through bhakti, pure devotional service, he is the best. For I am very dear to him and he is very dear to me. Udara sarva evaite jnani cha atmaiva me matam astita sahi yuktatma mama evan anutamam gatim. So Krishna explains that all these four who approach me are great souls, magnanimous souls. Udara sarva evaite. But one who is already situated in knowledge of me, who knows that I am all pervading and now is transcending or going beyond that to understand me, Krishna, who is the source of all. For such a person who is engaged in my bhakti, he attains me. So he says, after many, many lifetimes, such a person comes to him. In chapter 7, text 19, Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavan mam prapadyante vasudeva sarvamiti sa mahatma sudurlabha. After many, many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. And such a soul is very rare. So I will conclude here today's session.